Good morning. This is Barry O'Connell, and I am fortunate to have Lynn Foxwell with me today. And we're going to be talking about the election. What else can we talk about? Lynn?
We could be talking about baseball, I guess, seeing as how the Nationals are coming in battered and wounded into Camden Yards this weekend for a three-game series against the Orioles. But we'll talk about the Nationals sweep next week. Okay, today is about politics. So
Sounds
let's
good
get
to
rolling.
me. All right. Congratulations. You had a big win. You guided Adrian to the finish line. He did a masterful job. I was really pleased with him. He, he didn't get stupid. He didn't
Right.
get down in the gutter, no matter what they threw at him. He stayed the gentleman. He stayed the adult in the room. And people like, you know, Rusher and Baker, who I know we both have a lot of respect for. I was telling his campaign team, he's got to be the adult in the room. That's his lane. And instead, he's getting down with the progressives. I don't know. What did you see from your viewpoint? And not just on
Well,
Baker, but I mean the whole,
sure.
all of them.
Well, Barry, before we begin, just let me thank you as well. And I speak, I believe, on behalf of our entire crazy Maryland political world that we both inhabit. Your coverage of this past primary election cycle was utterly superb. It was deep, it was informative, it was of the moment, it was current. And you really stepped into a void that needed to be filled, not just for the benefit of candidates and getting their message out, but from in a broader sense. We needed this as a way of empowering an electorate that is losing its connective tissue to the political system. We don't have as much information in our political process. We don't have objective news-based, fact-based content. And when that happens, our democracy is weakened and people become further estranged from the political system in which they're investing with their tax dollars. So hats off to you, Barry. You did us all a service. Now, to
Thank
talk
you.
about the election that was, I wish I could take a scintilla of credit for Adrian Boafo's success. And you've been very, very gracious in what you've said about me online this week. But I have to tell you, Adrian Boafo is Adrian Boafo's own best political strategist. For someone who is so young, he is a finished political product. And what I mean by that is he brings every one of the essential ingredients to a campaign that one needs to win. He understands the mechanics of politics because he's been Steny Hoyer's right hand, both politically and inside the Congress. He obviously knows how to raise money, and I'm not talking about the outside money and all that stuff that was an attack line. He had a sophisticated fundraising apparatus in which he was getting small dollar contributions from families, from teachers, doctors, small business owners in the 5th Congressional District who understand he was the change. So mechanics, money, he had a message. And at a time, to your point, Barry, every time the other campaigns would make this a referendum on Adrian Boafo and go ranting about APAC and Oracle and all these other issues that have no meaning whatsoever on our weekly grocery bills, our what we're paying at the pump, or anything else. Adrian said, "I'm just going to stick to the fundamentals. This was and this is an affordability election. Never more so than in the 5th Congressional District that has been hit harder than any other district in the country by the rescission of the federal government. We've lost 31,000 direct jobs in the state of Maryland, in addition to thousands of indirect and tertiary jobs that are proximate to the federal government. Many of those, and I would dare to venture, most of those have been in the 5th District. So he was talking to people about how to get through the day, how to get through the weekend when the costs of everything are going up and wages are either stagnant or non-existent. And so he had a message, and to another point you made during the race in which you were talking about the characteristics of the 5th District. He understood the moment. He understood that districts matter and that a district that might work well in AOC, a campaign that might work well for AOC or in Ilhan Omar or Ayanna Presley's district doesn't work in a middle class federal government enclave of federal workers, educators, doctors, small business owners. He understood the district. Put those four things together, and he had an impressive night on Tuesday. And Barry, I gotta say, I think he's going to hit the ground running. I don't think there's ever been a candidate who we've elected to Congress in this state who is better prepared to go in and work within the system to deliver real results on day one.
I've got a feeling that he's going to be able to maintain 65% plus in all the elections for the foreseeable future. And he's a young man, so he's got a big foreseeable future. I mean, I don't think it's ever going to get close again. I don't think anybody's going to take a serious run because he didn't leave them room to take a serious run. I mean, he's been an important spokesman in this whole thing, and he's talking about families. He's talking about, I would always bring it back to things like sneakers. Okay. But those darn kids, they keep growing and you keep having to
Right.
buy them sneakers. And, there's times when if, if you just got laid off or you're downsized or you're moved out of your job or your department has been closed or sent to Iowa, a new pair of sneakers is a big deal. Um, I had some dear friends years ago, and I remember looking at their van, which had one of those little small size uh, spare tires on it for like a
Mhm.
month. And things are tough when somebody's got that on the car for like a month. And then they sprang back and it was okay. But people in Maryland are sensitive to the federal government, and the federal government is very poorly run. And that's why we need somebody stable like Adrian. But now, maybe I'm feeling sorry for myself. Maybe it's because I'm getting to be older than dirt.
Stop
But
it.
I'm getting the feeling that this is one of the nastiest races I've ever seen in my life. Um, the level of anti-Semitism, the level of insults. I mean, like one campaign in particular, but several of them did it too, tried to make Adrian's height a big deal. Adrian is not the tallest guy in the world. He's not being, asked to play basketball on most teams. Okay, but one very tall woman I know said to me, "I never realized he was short until I heard it from the other campaigns." I mean, how does that define a person? What does that say about their mind? You know, I mean, he is the man God made him, and people wanted to make silly stuff. They didn't have good things to argue about, so they went to things like height or that he got support from some super PACs, which he did not ask for, and he did not deal with those people. I mean, they chose him. He didn't go to them. So I I just thought this seemed like a very mean-spirited campaign in a lot of ways.
No, I completely agree with you, Barry. And even though the outcome was positive, we're still, I think, going to have to look back as a party and as stakeholders in a healthy democratic system and examine what happened in this race. Because I do think I don't think this was in any way isolated to the politics of the Fifth Congressional District. I think this is reflective of something that is deeply toxic and it's malignant and it's spreading throughout our political process within our own Democratic Party. I've been in this business 31 years. You and I have been through many of these cycles together. I have never seen the level of negativity and specifically the level of anti-Semitism that I saw in the closing weeks of this campaign. And was it effective? No, it was not effective in this district because campaigns are ultimately about the people we aspire to represent and not about the candidates who want to represent them. So they missed their mark. But I'm not going to excuse the issue simply because of our opponent's ineptitude. I think we have to look back, Barry, and ask ourselves, what is it about our party right now that leads people, candidates, and their consultants to believe that they can gain political ground and become more politically viable in primary elections by attacking Israel and the Jewish people in deeply negative and personal terms? It is sick, it is immoral, and it's an act of political suicide. Barry, the Jewish people have, and I'm not going to suggest they're a monolith because that would be reductive and unfair, but it has been a core block, a core element of the Democratic coalition since the age of Roosevelt. And if we lose the Jewish electorate who came to the Democratic Party on the premise that ours is the party of fairness and equality of opportunity,
Inclusion.
inclusion. I mean, from the days through the New Deal and the civil rights movement, and around through the battles for equality based on race, gender in the 80s, 90s, and today. If we lose that base, we're done. We don't win national elections anymore. We don't go in and compete and win in those upper Midwestern so-called blue wall states. That blue wall will be gone. And so we have to ask
Yep.
ourselves, are we going to let a few folks on the far performative left drive this party off of a political cliff? Or are we going to get back to the premise and the guiding principles that led our party to, for the last nearly 100 years? So we're at the precipice of a decision point. But what happened in this cycle, it can't continue to happen. I'd say it can't happen again.
We do look at the Jewish vote as if it were monolithic, but it reminds me of a story my mother used to tell. My mother was an Irish Catholic teacher at an Orthodox Jewish day school, seventh and eighth grade. And you know how kids that age can be.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
in between classes, before the class starts, these two little girls are in the front of the room, talking across their desks to each other. And the one's going, such and such's sister is dating a conservative. Now they were Orthodox, okay? She's dating a conservative. And the other girl goes, oh, better she should date a Catholic. And then they both look at my mother and go, oh, sorry, Mrs. O'Connell.
Sorry, Mrs. O'Connell. I love that.
I mean,
Might you be Catholic, Mrs. O'Connell?
it,
Possibly.
it was a constant challenge for my mother because many of these children had never had any sort of a personal relationship with a Christian before. And in our family, we had never had a lot of close ties or friendship or anything with the Orthodox Jewish community. And when you look at the Hasidim and the Orthodox, the conservatives, the reforms, the ultra reformed, and so on, they're all at different levels. And some of them are likely to be Democrats, some of them are likely to be Republicans, some of them are who knows what they're doing. It's just one of those things. But look, I mean, I keep stressing this all through. This has been one of my rallying points. I don't like Benjamin Netanyahu, and I don't like what happened in Gaza, and I don't approve of what they did. Okay, and I would like to see key members of the Israeli government plus Benjamin Netanyahu called up on war crimes in front of a tribunal. I think it's a disgrace. But I support the nation state of Israel. We
Right.
can't say get rid of Israel. We don't like their leader. That would be like saying get rid of the United States of America because we don't like Trump, and I don't like Trump either. Um, I mean, it's one of those things where we can't blame our government for Trump. I mean, they're different people, and that's what I
I
see.
complete, well said.
Yep.
Barry, the supreme act of irony that I encountered in this past election cycle, I was working a poll for Adrian and early vote, and I saw a kid there working for one of the other campaigns, and he was wearing an Iranian t-shirt with the new flag, not the
Okay.
flag of the dissidents, right? The new flag. And I went up to him and I said, "How how can you wear that shirt knowing what the history is in this country between Iran and the United States. Knowing that for 444 days they kept our people as hostages and subjected them to awful conditions, and that they want us blown off the face of the earth. And this kid had the audacity that comes only with youth, to say, well, that's just the leaders over there. You can still love the country and dislike the leaders. It's like, did you listen to what you just said? Because that's the essence. You're right, Barry. We hated Ceausescu back in the day, but we didn't say screw Romania, or we had issues with totalitarian leaders across the globe, but we
Absolutely.
wouldn't use it to attack the country as a whole, which has existed for millennia, and we didn't use it to attack individual people, and we didn't ask people in the United States to explain and be held accountable for the actions of their leaders from their native land. And so we are holding the Jewish people to a toxic double standard when we demand, as kind of an acceptance, a badge of acceptance in progressive circles, that Jewish people, Jewish Americans, apologize for Netanyahu's behavior, and renounce Netanyahu. That in and of itself is an act of political discrimination. That is an expectation we have of the Jewish people that we are not extending to any other ethnic or national group. And I gotta say, a lot. The fact is that this is being done under the patina of progressive politics, and I love Senator Van Hollen. I'm a huge fan of his. You know how helpful he was to us last year when we were trying to liberate Pastor Fuentes. But I don't think he did the party any favors when he came out and spoke exclusively about APAC money and singled out Adrian Boafo in the 5th District. If you're going to be opposed to outside money and dark money in politics, which is a worthy discussion to have, well, let's be against all of it. Let's be against money from trial lawyers, anesthesiologists, teachers, trade unions, developers, the NRA, the Koch brothers. Let's denounce it in its entirety, rather than just saying, there's APAC. Let's focus on that,
Something that
because
concerned me,
that's
Lynn,
discriminatory.
something that concerned me very much was I was talking to some of my friends who have been deeply involved at the highest levels of fundraising, particularly with the Jewish community. So I asked, "What about Chris and APAC?" And he says he never took APAC money. Well, somebody
That's not true.
said he said he got money from the same people as APAC. He got people from APAC adjacent donors. He said whether they gave it through APAC or not, it was the same people. He said, "I know. I was in the room." I mean, this is not a secret when you dig in very deep. And here's something interesting. When you take a look at his fundraising, Chris has decreased the amount of money he raises in Maryland substantially, mostly because he stopped seeking Jewish contributors. And he's getting money from, like, his biggest state outside of Maryland is Texas, where a small group of Arab American families, very wealthy families, all the family members are maxing out. They're all giving him, whatever it is, $6,000 contributions. Um, he raised something like $150,000. He's not even on the ballot now. He's he raised $150,000 in Texas. So he's seeing himself as the the CARE voters, the Council on American
Islamic
Islamic
relations.
Relations.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the crowd he's going after, and I'm being told that a big part of it is he doesn't think he can get he doesn't think he can beat Schumer for majority leader of the Senate with his normal financing. But if he goes over and if he gets a new source of financing through the American um, the American Arab donors, he's going to be making a run at Chuck Schumer. And I can see the logic of that, but it strikes me as treacherous and duplicitous. He never said anything, and God bless her, she's a good lady. I used to pick on her, but Sarah Elfreth, you know, I used to be very tough on Sarah. Maybe partially because of her stand on ICE and on the unlawful capture of that pastor. I shifted my opinion on Sarah, but he never said a word about Sarah taking, what
No.
was it, 4 million or 6 million or whatever. He never said anything about anybody taking money from APAC until it's Adrian. And then he's got this black guy that he's going to come out against and bash Adrian in the press regularly. I thought that was racist,
I,
anti-Semitic, ugly.
boy, at least I gotta say, I think the optics were bad, based on the context that you just laid out. Do I think Senator Van Hollen's a racist? No, no, and I know that's not what you're saying. I think he is in my heart and in my belief, he's a good man. But I think that two things have to be. I think we have to look at two things. First, if he is going to call out big money and the corrosive impact that it has on our political dialogue, which is a premise upon which Adrian agrees. He said the same thing. We should get dark money out of politics. We need to get the corporate money out of politics. Citizens United was one of the worst things that's happened to our democracy in the past 50 years. But you can't be selective about it. You can't look at this entire panoramic of interest groups who have a stake in congressional lawmaking and try to influence the process and gain access to lawmakers and just pick out one because you happen to disagree with that one. I think the surgical, specific way in which he targeted one group, I think hurt Senator Van Hollen's cause because it made it not so much a critique about big money in politics, but it was a critique on Jewish money in politics.
Yes.
And I think that was an entirely darker conversation to have. But again, Barry, to your earlier point, to what we've been discussing, Christopher Van Hollen is running for president. He's acknowledged that he's kicking the tires, which is Washington speak for, yeah, I'm putting my hat in the ring. I'm testing the waters. No, we don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know how far he'll go, but yeah, he's in presidential politics now. And again, I think it has to be asked as a party, why does someone who is as tactically superior as Chris Van Hollen, who is one of the best political strategists we've had in this country in the past 50 years, why does he see a lane within a crowded Democratic primary field by by staking out a position that can be interpreted as anti-Semitic? What is it about our party? And how in the world is this a sustainable business model for the Democratic Party? Um, I guess in short, I would say that Senator Van Hollen is executing a political strategy. I don't think it's good for him. I don't think it's good for political engagement in a state in which people are increasingly turned off by politics. And I don't think it's good for the Democratic Party as a whole.
Let's shift slightly. I want to tell you there is a red dumpster now in Maryland politics.
Mhm.
The red dumpster arrived in front of the Trone headquarters, so they're cleaning out the headquarters today. He's got the U-Haul trucks up there. He's got a great big bright red dumpster, and it seemed apropos, as if a red dumpster is the perfect image of the David Trone campaign. We're getting close on time. We're going to clock out soon, but just the whole concept of somebody spending more than $60 million to run for Senate and losing, and then running. I heard numbers like 25,000 to run, 25 million to run for Congress. Do you think there's a possibility that either he didn't hire the right strategist, or people in District 6 just don't like him that much.
It's hard for me to take any type of lesson in a grander sense from that race because April Delaney and David Trone were mirror images of one another. I couldn't think, and I pride myself on being somewhat knowledgeable about this process. I couldn't think of a single issue in which the two of them had a differing opinion, and I couldn't think of a single hypothetical vote that they would take differently on Capitol Hill where they seated. I think there were two economic plutocrats who wanted the same thing. They went for it, and they spent ungodly amounts of money at April 1 because largely because she's the incumbent and there are benefits of incumbency. I hope that this is the end of the road for David Trone. And I say this as someone who likes David, and I've known him since I was working in Peter Franchot's office as an alcohol regulator. And obviously, he was someone who was challenging a very calcified alcohol beverage regulatory status quo. And I like his sense of innovation. I like his fearlessness. And I think he has done enormous good with his money over the course of time. That said, there comes a time when the trail ends. And I think now he's now lost his last two elections in convincing manners. And I don't see the path forward. He is still a relatively young guy as far as these things go. He has the time and obviously the resources to make a prodigious change in our world. And I hope that he is able to turn his attention to that and away from the rather ephemeral benefits of running for a public office that he'll probably never get in the first place.
It used to be that if you lost three races in a row, you were done politically. That was the end of you. But now our friend Baker has lost four races in a row, and at the same time, Robin Ficker is back. Robin Ficker wins the Republican nomination in District 6. Um, I don't think this is going to be Robin's year, but it's good to see an old timer who's been running. The last time he won an election was 1978. A lot
At
of
the
my
House of Delegates
readers,
race in Montgomery, right?
absolutely, and a lot of my readers weren't even born the last time Robin won a race, but he keeps trying.
I worry about some of these candidates who run repeatedly. I point them to the case study of Harold Stassen, the former governor of Minnesota, a man who was in the 1940s, this dashing young figure in the Republican Party who was believed to have this big political future. And he ended he his his credible run in national politics ended in 1948 when he lost the nomination to New York Governor Tom Dewey. But then he went on to run in every presidential election through, I believe, 1992. And by the time he went into the 70s and 80s, people only knew him as a perennial candidate, kind of a political side note, and didn't remember that at one point he had legitimately been a big deal inside the arena. So I hope that as a means of preserving legacy, and Rashawn Baker's legacy is enormous. He is a giant in the political annals of Prince George's County. I hope he ends the trail here. And I hope he, like Congressman Trone, rededicates his focus and his prodigious talent to making the world around him better. Should he do that, there is nobody better equipped to be a force for positive change than Rashawn Baker. Still one of my best friends and one of my favorite clients in this business, even though we were on opposite sides of this last election.
That must be challenging for you. Helping somebody one time, working against them the next time, but that's the nature of the business. That's um, just the way it works out. So I can see that. I, I thought I I didn't think this was a good run for him. I think if he had run for county executive again, he might have done very well. Something I noticed, okay, um, when Angela also Brooks ran for county executive, she got 60% of the vote. The second time she ran, she got 90% of the vote. Okay. Um, now, now Aisha got 45% of the vote when she ran the first time and won in a crowded field. So that's not a bad
Right.
victory at all. And then she got 70% this time. She's running 20% off, 20% behind Angela at the same point. And remember, we were all counting up who's going to run for governor. And every time we talked about who's going to run for governor, somebody in the conversation said, "What about Angela?" And Angela was the "what about Angela" person for years because we knew that once she directed her focus on something, it was going to be big. And now looking at Aisha, and I'm wondering, I don't see her as a contender statewide in the same way that Angela also Brooks was. And so I don't see a Senate seat in the future for Aisha, but we're not counting her out. She'll run for something. After she's county executive, she'll probably run for something statewide, and she could end up as attorney general. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I noticed the same thing about her vote totals on election night, and as the mail-in ballots have been steadily counted, uh, right now she has. I do think she has a future beyond Prince George's County. I emphasize I think, because she still has some work to do back home. I don't think that her performance during the snowstorm did her any favors. I think that image of the dance party at the hotel, the bills that were incurred by the hotel stay, I don't think that was I don't think that was good for her. And I think those are defining images of her in the minds of many voters at this point. And so someone who is a well-heeled incumbent with money, with absolute power over the levers of government. She shouldn't be surrendering 30% in a Democratic primary. So she's got some work to do back home. Does she have a future? Of course she does. Prince George's County, is the single largest bank of Democratic primary votes in the state. There's no reason to believe that trend's not going to continue. So anyone who has that office is automatically catapulted into the statewide discussion. But she has got to tighten it up. And she
Absolutely.
needs to put some substantive accomplishments on the board and and redefine herself as someone who is primarily concerned with improving the operations of government and making it work for struggling families. Um, so we'll see how it turns out. The next move is up
Yep.
to her.
She's got to be the serious adult in the room. That was one thing Baker always did well.
Correct.
Baker had some ups and downs, but he was always the serious adult in any conversation he went into. And I think Brave Boy needs to focus more serious, less silliness, less partying, less blue and yellow mania, and more focused on serving the people of her county. But
I think that's exactly right.
we're about at the wrapping up point. Anything you want to say before we cut this?
No, Barry, I think I would like to end our discussion the same way I began it. We owe you a debt of gratitude, my friend. I know how many phone calls you would get in the course of a day. I can only imagine, it's like take the number of races in the state that were going on and multiply it by four, and that's probably how many calls and messages you would get. It's hard work. No one's going to get rich off of it, but you have done it as a public service, and we're better off for your service and because you were here. So thanks, Barry.
Hey, thank you, and I really appreciate you coming on. And so hopefully we'll do this again soon.
I'd welcome it, sir. Thanks again for the chance.
Take care. Thank you.